States. It's Mark from the United States.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Mark from the States. How are we doing today? I am doing fantastic. I hope you are as well. Today, episode 3 of the original series by Vlogging Through History. The first 2 have just been incredible and just moving and just shocking to see what it was like back then. He is on location there, and Chris does an amazing job, so please go and support his channel. He has been a supporter of this channel, and I am so blessed to have him allow us to watch his stuff. And he doesn't just do this original stuff, which is just truly amazing, and which is why you should go to his channel, as for his original stuff. But he also does reactions and just breakdowns of historical events and top 10 lists, and it's just so many cool things. If you enjoy history, and it's not just American history, it's obviously, here we are, World War I. He does World War II stuff. I mean, everything. He's done so many different ranges of topics, and the guy is so knowledgeable, and it is worth your time if you have not gone over to his channel and cruise around. You could seriously go down the rabbit hole over there, which I have, and just watch a bunch of stuff. It's just, and he's just a great guy. Plus, he's like a supporter of West Brom, I think. So he likes your football, even. So there. I mean, that alone should get you to watch his channel, since all of you, love football, right? Okay. I don't know if that's true, but we'll see. But anyway, he's a great guy, so please go and support his channel. Watch his stuff. It's incredible. So I'm excited to get into episode 3. This is In Flanders Field, the story of John McCrae and Essex Farm. Let's do it.
There are times in history when man's darkest experiences have produced some of his most beautiful expressions of emotion. The Great War was one of those times. On both sides, soldiers wrote diaries, letters, books, and poems that expressed what they were experiencing. Many of the greatest works produced during that time from men who before the war would never have considered themselves to be great writers. John McCrae was born in Ontario, Canada, the grandson of Scottish immigrants. In medical school, he tutored the other students to help pay his own tuition. After he graduated, he served as a lieutenant in the Second Boer War in South Africa before returning to practice medicine and teach pathology at the University of Vermont in the United States. When the Great War began, McCrae was appointed a major in the 1st Brigade Canadian Field Artillery. During the Second Battle of Ypres, he wrote one of the most vivid accounts of the horror of that battle that we have to this day. In a letter that he wrote home to his mother, he said, quote, "For 17 days and 17 nights, none of us have had our clothes off or even our boots, except occasionally. And all that time while I was awake, gunfire and rifle fire never ceased for 60 seconds. And behind it all was the constant background of the sights of the dead, the wounded, the maimed, and a terrible anxiety lest the line should give way." End quote.
Jeez.
McCrae worked with the wounded here at the Essex Farm Advanced Dressing Station. And as many of the men that were treated here did not survive, the Essex Farm Cemetery began receiving burials around the same time. By April 25th, the Canadian forces here had lost 60% of their original strength of 10,000 men. The hospital and cemetery received new men every day. John McCrae continued to do his best for the streams of wounded and dying men that were brought here. On May 2nd, a close friend, Lieutenant Alexis Helmer, was struck by the direct hit of an 8-inch shell. There was very little left of his friend, but McCrae personally performed the burial service here. And during that service, he noticed how quickly poppies seemed to sprout up around the graves of the recently buried men. The next day, Major McCrae sat down and wrote his thoughts in a poem. In Flanders fields, the poppies grow, between the crosses row on row that mark our place. And in the sky, the larks still bravely singing fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved. And now we lie in Flanders fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders fields.
Just gave me goosebumps. There it is.
Witnesses to the occasion later recalled that McCrae would periodically look over at his friend's grave as he wrote. When he had finished, he shared the poem with a few people, but by all accounts, he was really quite unhappy with the work. And according to those accounts, he crumpled up the paper and threw it away. One of the men present had the sense to rescue the page, and he was able to convince McCrae to submit it for publication. Now, when the poem was published that December, and in many of the published works that followed, they changed the first line to say, in Flanders fields the poppies blow, rather than grow, which was what McCrae originally wrote. The poem itself was instantly popular. McCrae was proud of the poem's success. He hoped that it would help inspire men to do their duty. But he was also a little frustrated because it so often got published with the wrong word in the first line. Eventually, Major McCrae was permanently transferred from the artillery to the medical corps, and he was stationed in Boulogne, France in June of 1915. It was there that he was promoted to the rank of lieutenant colonel, and he was placed in charge of medicine at the No. 3 Canadian General Hospital. He was promoted to the acting rank of colonel on January 13th, 1918, and named consulting physician to the British armies in France. Unfortunately, Colonel McCrae contracted pneumonia the same day he was promoted, and later came down with cerebral meningitis. On January 28th, he died in the military hospital at Wimereux was buried there with full military honors. As for the grave of his friend, like so many others, it was lost in the chaos of war, and it's now one of the many marked unknown here. His name was inscribed on the wall at the Meningate Memorial in the town. Well, I was really here at Essex Farm just to talk about John McCrae and the poem, but there is one grave I want to highlight while we're here. It's probably the most decorated grave in the cemetery. You see all of the crosses with poppies as well as a couple of teddy bears. It's because Valentine Stredwick was just a kid. He really was. He was 15 years old when he was killed in January of 1916 and buried here at Essex Farm. My son will be 15 in 2 weeks. I can't even begin to imagine what his parents went through. He was just a kid. A lot of these were just kids. As for the poem, it gained worldwide fame. Inspired by it, American professor Moyna Michael resolved at the end of the war to begin wearing a red poppy to honor the soldiers who died. She also wrote a poem of her own called "We Shall Keep the Faith." She distributed silk poppies to others and campaigned to have them adopted as an official symbol of remembrance by the American Legion. Now, another woman, Madame E. Guerin, attended the 1920 Legion Convention and was inspired to sell poppies in her native France in order to raise money for orphans of the war. In 1921, she sent poppy sellers to London ahead of Armistice Day, and that attracted the attention of Field Marshal Douglas Haig. Haig encouraged the sale of those poppies, and the practice quickly spread throughout the British Empire. Today, over 100 years later, the poppy has become the symbol of remembrance, especially when it comes to the men of the Great War.
That is incredible. I didn't know they changed the first line, that word, from grow to blow. Gosh, that was so good. It really was. John McCrae. Yeah, I've heard of him, of course, in the time we've been learning about the First World War and of course the poppies and all that stuff. And I knew that it was started here in America, then it kind of just went to France and then to the UK, and it kind of fell away here in the States. It's still used in some regard, of course, but I would love for it to come back full like it does where you're at. I've been blessed that many of you have sent me poppies, so I am ready to go, and I wear mine on occasion. and will be wearing them, of course, in November. But I wish it was more of a common thing here in the States. Something that you would see a drive by the American Legion to sell poppies. I don't know if they do or don't, but I wish they would. I wish it became as popular. And it's such a great way to remember and a great way to support people who lost loved ones and so on, veterans and their families. Really cool. But this video was so good, and it really kind of went in depth of who John was and just the story of the poem, which we all know now is just, you know, when you think of In Flanders Fields, you think of this poem and stuff like that. And Chris did an amazing job, and like he always does. So please support his channel. The First World War is just on a whole nother level when it comes to carnage, tragedy, death, brutality. I mean, this Second World War, of course, the military technology changes, and of course death becomes easier. But the First World War, it was so primitive, but yet so brutal. So brutal. This video was good. Very good. Please support Vlogging Through History. Thank you so much for coming and watching these with us. And hopefully you learned as much as I have. And I can't wait till we get into episode 4 of Vlogging's series here on Ypres. So, or Ypres, I should say. Hope everybody's happy, healthy, and safe. Thanks so much for coming. Take care, everyone. We'll see you later. Bye.
Mark from the States, Mark from the States, it's Mark